Beach break was last night. We had a solid cage match for the AEW World Heavyweight Championship, as well as some other matches. We saw answers to MJF and the Hurt Syndicate, and more. We'll talk about all of that, and then some quick AEW news at the end of this video, as well as bringing back Wrestling Roulette on this episode of Screw the Script. Real quick, I just wanted to mention before I start covering Dynamite. Last week I forgot to mention that they changed the theme, and it's actually from Sum 41's last album that came out last year. You Wanted War is the name of the song, if I'm not mistaken. Solid song. Great final album from that band. That was a band of my childhood for sure. So it really gets you going too. I got hyped for last week's episode, and I got hyped for this week's episode of Beach Break. It was a fun ride from start to finish. I mean, it was one of the fastest 2 hours that I have had in pro wrestling in a long time, and it really baffles me week in and week out how quick an episode of Dynamite and Collision goes compared to the pacing that we get from Raw and SmackDown. To me, it's night and day. I mean, you've got a 2-hour show for both AEW products, and they're, high speed from start to finish. And they throw in promos there. Like, their promos are legit. They just don't waste half the show doing promos, and that's fine. Raw and SmackDown, the pacing is just a lot slower. It's really comparing molasses to like a Red Bull. But anyways, the show started off with a solid tag match. Man, Ospreay and Hangman, those two together really reminds me of when we had Hangman and Omega as a tag team, and they were dominant. If you guys remember that back in the early days of AEW when they had that feud with the Young Bucks. That's very much what I got from this match, what it felt like. Ultimately, we saw those two win. Really, really good match. Awesome spots. The highlight was the unique pin to get the victory on Josh Alexander, which I got a clip right here of it.
We could get this under control here, guys. Hangman and a Page. Sharp hidden blade combination. Wow.
So like I said, amazing opening match. Ospreay and Hangman pick up the win. And now, later this month, we are going to see what I think will be an all-timer in AEW history. A match between Hangman and Ospreay, where the winner goes on to face Jon Moxley at All In, because he did retain, and we'll get to that momentarily here. Next, I just want to glance over this because it was the most insignificant part of the night. It was just cheap laughs. Credit does go out to Zach Gowen, though. He is legit in the ring. He was a lot better in the ring than I was expecting him to be. I know he has been a pro wrestler for like 20 years now, on and off. So I knew that he had wrestling capabilities, but it is damn impressive that he's able to wrestle like that. He's better than Pat McAfee in the ring, that's for sure. Yeah, it went on longer than I expected it to. This very much felt like the Gunther and Pat McAfee stuff, though. If I'm going to talk bad on the Gunther and Pat McAfee match, this was basically AEW's version of that as well. Should have been over in under 5 minutes. Instead, it went on over 10 minutes. There's really not much to be said about this match. All it really does is it solidifies Ricochet as a top heel in AEW, because at the end of the match, he just started wailing on Zach Gowen some more. And then Gowen was saved by Briscoe, and it kind of furthers those two feuding, Briscoe and Ricochet. But let's just get on to the next part. The women's match, I got wrong in my prediction video, and someone pointed it out. I guess I essentially looked at the card and I felt like Crazy Eyes from Mr. Deeds. And I assumed it was a tag match. I didn't even look at it close enough. But instead it was a 4-way eliminator match. And we saw Mina pick up the win. She is probably going to start getting a push. I did mention in my last video from yesterday that she has ended her run in Stardom. So it looks like she is going to take on a full-time role now in AEW. So we will probably see her a lot more, and with her getting this victory, makes a lot of sense. So we'll see what comes of that. Toni Storm losing doesn't hurt her at all. It wasn't for a title or anything. Things can happen in fatal four-way matches. It's really a toss-up who wins, unless it's very predictable. This one wasn't as predictable. We didn't get Cedric Alexander last night like I predicted, but he's definitely coming. He'll be here next week when MJF does that contract signing. I really think the 3 thumbs up wasn't for him. Like I said in my last video, it's a red herring. I think they're going to turn on MJF, and Cedric Alexander is actually going to be the one that joins the Hurt Syndicate over in AEW. They were a faction in the WWE under the Hurt Business, so it makes complete sense. So ultimately, I do think he is still showing up. I think they should have done it last night, since it is the bigger special episode of Dynamite. So I think that was kind of a drop of the ball. But if we still get Cedric Alexander next week, it should be a fun segment for next week's Dynamite. But I'm very much expecting to see Cedric Alexander get in the mix with MJF and the Hurt Syndicate. We saw the Hurt Syndicate pick up a quick win against Top Flight. Not much to be said about that. We saw Nigel come out, cut a promo. Essentially, I think it's going to lead, it looks like it's leading to a feud with FTR. Now, again, this started before the Pat McAfee Gunther stuff, so you can't say that AEW is copying WWE's like feud with a commentator and wrestler, and also it's not even close to a 1-to-1 because Nigel would run circles around Pat McAfee in the ring because he was a legit wrestler before he had a career-ending neck injury. So I am actually way more interested in this, seeing Nigel versus either Dax or Cash. It's probably going to be Dax. Those two will most likely have a match at Double or Nothing, if that's what was announced. I can't remember exactly what happened in the promo, but I just wanted to bring up those couple of things. Main event was a solid steel cage match. They always pull out a really good cage match in AEW. Obviously, this wasn't as good as the Ospreay and Fletcher cage match that we saw earlier this year, but still a good cage match nonetheless. And the highlight that I want to talk about is the end. Right here's a photo. GABE KIDD comes out and helps Moxley and the DEATHRIDERS keep the title with them. Is he now joining the DEATHRIDERS? I know he is also in a contract year with New Japan. Are we going to start seeing a lot more of GABE KIDD? I love GABE KIDD. I would love to see him in AEW full time, and I really think he fits the mold of the DEATHRIDERS because he cut a promo a few months back, basically taking shots at AEW left and right. So it makes total sense that he would align with a group, a faction that is pretty much anti-current AEW and how things are ran. Makes total sense, and it adds a lot more depth to the DEATHRIDERS and makes them more interesting. And I think that'll be interesting enough to keep this storyline going until July at All In. And I'm still predicting that Hangman Adam Page takes that belt at All In. I have said it, I think, 3 or 4 times on separate videos on my channel. I am sticking with it. We'll see if I'm right in a couple of months. But that's my coverage of Dynamite Beach Break. Now let's get on to some quick news before we do Wrestling Roulette. Willow Nightingale, right up here. She has signed a new contract with AEW. There's not full details yet in the contract, but I'm assuming it's a multi-year deal, at least 3 years. So we are not going to see Willow Nightingale go anywhere. She's been a solid female wrestler for AEW. All they really need to do now is lock in a long-term contract for Mariah May. I'm hoping that she does stay with AEW because her and Toni Storm, in my mind, had the best women's feud of 2024, tail end of 2024, heading into 2025. There was nothing that topped that for me. So now we're going to do Wrestling Roulette. I'm just going to do one match at a time. I'm going to do it more often now, but I'm only going to do one match. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take a stipulation that has either happened very recently or is going to happen. So we saw a steel cage match tonight. So that's what the stipulation is going to be. Steel cage match. And we're going to pick 2 random wrestlers. So if you haven't seen this, here it is. I've got a wheel of about, I think, 46. I can't remember how many entries I have in here. I think it says somewhere. 40. I have 40 entries of wrestlers from AEW. So we're just going to do it. We're going to spin it once. We're going to see what we get. And then we'll spin it a second time. And then we'll kind of pick who we think's who would win in that steel cage match. So here's the first spin. So I could see it spinning there. Okada, it looks like. All right. So we got Okada versus this person in a steel cage match. Now returning Anthony Bowens after his absence for, I forget how long he was gone for. So Anthony Bowens and Okada in a steel cage match. I would think that Anthony Bowens would come out with Billy Gunn along his side, but Okada would obviously have the numbers because the Bucks would probably back him up. And I think just with scenarios like that, you gotta take into account for everything. You know, it's not just going to be Okada and Anthony Bowens. It's going to be their respective supporters also probably getting involved. I'm going to say Okada would win. I think Anthony Bowens would put a solid 20-minute cage match with Okada. But as soon as he starts to get the upper hand towards the end of the match, after they've been going at it against each other for a while, that's when I think the Young Bucks would come out. Billy Gunn would try and help, but the numbers would just be too much. Because you'd probably get some other help as well that would take down Billy Gunn. Essentially distract Anthony Bowens enough for Okada to hit the Rainmaker. So that's how I'd see that scenario playing out. You let me know down below how you think that would play out, if you think it would play out differently. But that's that stipulation of this week's Wrestling Roulette. That's all I had on this episode of Screw the Script. Let me know down below what you thought about Beach Break last night. Did you like the steel cage match? What are your thoughts on the returns that we got in Sky Blue? GABE KIDD coming back on AEW television to help out the Death Riders. It was a fun episode, and we got the second half of it for Collision this Saturday. As always, this has been Maverick. Thanks for watching.